I would like to bring up my colleague, Mr. Mo Chopdat. He is a property investor. He's the founder of Sprud. He's a sourcing specialist and he's also a success student of our Property Bootcamp online course.
So hi guys, as Lawrence said, my name is Mo. That's short for Mohammed. So I started investing about a year ago, and what I am right now, I'm a full-time employee. I work in the post-production industry for commercials, and we do most of the high-end commercials. So anything you've seen from South Africa that's on YouTube or on TV is probably from us. And my journey started basically, I went on my first trip to Turkey, which is photo on the right and on the left of your right. So I went to Turkey and I went backpacking to Turkey, and I had this epiphany, like, geez, I love traveling, and taking the time to save money just to go every 2 years or something. I mean, that's not for me, and the job is not really going anywhere. So there has to be another way. And essentially, that is the same time on my way back from Turkey where I was listening to the audiobook, Rich Dad Poor Dad. And I'm sure most of you can contest that that book kind of changes your whole mindset. And the moment I landed back in Joburg, I basically went to the internet and I Googled Robert Kiyosaki. I found legacy education. I signed up immediately and I went through the course. Eventually, I was partnered with, I chose Lawrence as my coach. And that's how I got started investing in real estate. I was also not a big deal, but I was a semi-finalist for Investor of the Year, the beginners category last year. Not a big thing, but just thought I'd mention it. So this is how I started off when I used to find leads. I actually used to spend 30 minutes a day just browsing the web. Takes about 10 minutes of my time. So I'm looking for about 20 deals. And essentially, I used to spend about 12 hours per week going out, getting frustrated with agents, going everywhere from Johannesburg to Pretoria to Johannesburg South. I mean, I went everywhere and I had little to show for it. And essentially, I needed to change my game plan. And what I essentially done was that I reworked the way I actually found leads. And this is how I actually do it now. And I'll share it with you guys further on. But right now, how I'm marketing is that I spend about an hour just looking for leads. And I use SEO technique for attracting sellers, sorry. It takes me about 10 minutes to qualify a lead. And once I qualify the lead, which is I qualify about 2 deals a month, and I get those under contract. And the way I get them under contract is that I know my basics so well that I know a done deal when I see it. And basically, but the amount of time I spend every month is about 4 to 6 hours. So here's some background about my first rental property. This is while I was a student of Lawrence. So I think it was 2 months into the program, I found this deal in Tulisa Park, and essentially the seller was in a really picky position. She owed people money, and the reason she owed people money was that her business partner, kind of ran away with the money, and she had debts to pay off, and she needed cash quickly. So essentially, I didn't have the cash at hand, so we came up with a strategy which meant we use creative means of actually financing. And how I negotiated that, basically, based on my salary, I could only afford a certain amount for a month. So I needed to work into those parameters, and the property was worth about 620 at the time. And what we did was basically I worked on a JV with the owner, and I paid 250,000 for the property. And right now I'm in full control of the property, and I'm cash flowing about 1,500 every month. And the seller also gets something once I sell the property. And that's how I got my first property under contract. And this is basically just some of the figures. So my gross sales is about 30%, ROI 17%. I'm planning in a few months' time to actually refinance and pull out all the money I put in. So essentially, I'll be having infinite return, and I'll be owning the property with no money down. And if I had to exit the deal for whatever reason, I could be looking at about a 270% profit, and that's a cha-ching moment, I think. So let's take a look at one of the first multi-leg deals that I have done. So it was about 2 months ago, I decided to focus on multi-let and sourcing strategy. And the reason was basically this. I was finding a lot of good deals. The problem was that I was finding it difficult to actually get people to finance my deals. And essentially, this was a waste of time for me. So I changed my strategy. And that is essentially building the capital in order to do either a flip or buy and hold. And the only way I could do it with the budget that I had was to use sourcing as a means. So how I came upon this deal was that I had my marketing going on around Johannesburg in very specific areas. And I had a caller call me and tell me she's interested in selling. And funny enough, she wasn't actually motivated. They were this old and tired, and they had a very big house, and they just didn't want to do all the maintenance of the house. So what I did is I came to the house, I took my photos, I spoke to the seller, got an understanding of who we are, built rapport, and I went back home and I put together a proposal and I sent an offer to the seller and I said, okay, I'm going to pay 1.4 million for your property. And she said, no way, Jose. So I said, fine. If you change your mind, here I am. And I waited I think it was about 3 weeks. And then I contacted the seller again and I said, hey, I've got a different proposal for you. I want to do an installment sale. And I said, why don't we do a installment sale? Say, for instance, we were doing a 20-year sort of mortgage with a balloon payment in 5 years or so. And she said she doesn't like that deal. So we kind of met a compromise where she wanted 1.7, I wanted 1.4, and I said, and we agreed upon 1.6 million. Oh, sorry. So I got the deal, and essentially what I did was I call it a catch and release. So I had a buyer that I knew who was really interested in doing multi-lets, and I knew the area was primed for a really good investment. So once I got my proposal done and finished, which took me just about an hour, I sent my proposal to the seller first because I knew that's exactly what he's looking for. And just as a backup plan, I sent a proposal also to Sapin Connect, which is basically Sapin's way of helping sourcing agents actually connecting a sourcing agent to a potential buyer. And lo and behold, the investor actually called me about 15 minutes later saying, let's book a time to meet. Next day we met, we looked at the property, he brought his builder across, we looked at the figures, and basically the builder said, I can do a lot more with this. And so basically the next day we signed the contract. And right now we're looking at closing, I think this month or next month. And at that point, that's where I'll get my sourcing fee for the information that I provided to the seller. I mean, just by the figures, you might see an ROI of 14%, and I know a lot of people will say, no, that's nothing. You need like 15 or something percent. But remember, it's a minimum ROI. So the worst case scenario for the seller is that they're getting 14% of cash flow. When you do the math, actually, the ROI can actually go up to 22% if there's no vacancy, if there's no maintenance done. Essentially, that's how we got the deal. So what's also valuable when you notice the market value of the deal is about 2.5 million, which means there's a lot of equity in the seller to actually refinance and get most of the money back in the future. So that's a positive also. And that's essentially how I got one of my leads sourced to a potential buyer. Okay, so I just want to go back and just like help you understand my kind of mindset. Like at the time before I started sourcing property, I was in a very kind of confused state of that. The idea of earning more money had always been appealing to me, but my strategy wasn't working. And the reason it wasn't working is because I was looking for the big fish, and I wasn't ready to catch that big fish. And so I took a different approach, and I went back to the books and I studied everything I've learned before, and I created areas of where there are great investments in Johannesburg. I studied the strategies, and essentially what I did was that I created a small booklet of what is my criteria, what is the buyer's criteria, and how do I find the buyers, how do I find the best deal for that particular buyer? So I really targeted my focus on very specific areas, and that also kind of like narrowed my focus and took me away from the everything approach where I'll just go anywhere in Johannesburg. So knowing your basics is probably one of the most important things. And also, I can't stress this enough, be conservative with your numbers. I know how easy it is to find a deal you think is a good deal, and all of a sudden you change it in the numbers just to make it look good. The truth at the end of the day is that a really good investor will know a good deal from a bad deal. So you'll just sorry, you will just be spending the extra time, just wasting time, just actually trying to get that deal sold. It's very important to always have two exit strategies ready for the investor, so they know there is one. Putting your basic proposal to a stress test to see if the investment goes one way or the other, does it still work? That's also good information to provide to a potential investor. And so this is the kind of ways I go about finding leads. So driving for dollars, if you don't know what that is, basically what you do is you get in your car and you drive around neighborhoods and you look for, you go to the best neighborhood and you look for the worst looking house. So, the house that's not painted well, the paint's peeling off, grass is overgrown, the windows are probably boarded up, there's rust maybe. You're kind of looking for those properties, and you're essentially taking note of these properties, and you're making a list of potential leads that you can go to, and you'll market to those people and ask them if they are willing to sell their house. And that's what driving for dollars is. It's basically the best way to start off. Essentially, no money down, you just go around looking for potential leads. Another way, which is cold calling, and I was very, I don't think anyone likes cold calling, but it's probably still the best way to actually find potential leads and negotiate best deals. So, if you're thinking about sourcing, you just have to get used to kind of being the salesman at the end of the day. But there's a way of doing it that doesn't offend the buyer and actually can be beneficial for all parties. So another method that people use are bandit signs. I don't do that because I think there's legal ramifications of that. You can't put bandit signs here and you can't put bandit signs there. I think it's government regulated, so I don't really bother about that. I think Andrew uses the pamphlets method, which is essentially also a good method if you looking at a particular demographic. So what I found is that SEO strategies, which is essentially you're creating a website and you're creating a funnel for people who are searching for a solution to their problem to find you. And that works for a very specific age group, which is about 35 to about 55. But you're also looking for the people who are older, like 65. And not necessarily those people won't actually go on the internet to look for solutions to their problems. And the best way to get hold of them is either through newspapers or through pamphlets. So door knocking is essentially the same as driving for dollars. You basically go into the door, knocking on the door, saying, "Hey, my seller, I'm investing in the area. I'm looking to buy your house. Are you interested in selling it to me?" And that's essentially what you're trying to do. Direct to mail. So direct to mail is basically, again, you're creating a list of people. You're going and you're finding, you're creating a basic post that you will mail to them in the mail, and it essentially says the same thing. "Hey, Mr. Seller, I'm investing in the area. I'm looking to buy your house. Are you interested in selling to me?" SEO, as I mentioned, that's basically using your website to attract potential leads. Now, bird dogs is another strategy, which is actually I haven't used, but I think it's very useful in the sense that what you do is that if you got a mailman that comes around your house delivering post-its and stuff like that, maybe stop him and say, "Hey, Mr. Mailman, listen here. I am looking to buy houses. I'm looking for this kind of house. This is how it should be. The house is basically overgrown. It doesn't look like something that I would actually live in. I'm looking for those kind of houses. And if you bring me an address of that house, I will give you a finder's fee of, say, 5,000 Rand for every deal that goes through." And I do the same thing with lawyers. And if you have an Uber driver and you travel with Uber a lot, maybe just mention that to the Uber driver also. "Hey, listen, you go around a lot of places. If you find a house that looks in this kind of way, please call me, let me know, and I'll compensate you for that." Another good resource is family and friends. Spread the word out. Say, "Hey, listen here, cuz, listen here, bro. I'm looking for these kind of houses. If you see anything, just WhatsApp me, send me a message. I'll day something in for you there." I put investor-friendly property practitioners, which are real estate agents essentially. And the reason I put investor-friendly, there's a very specific kind of real estate agent that focuses on investors, and it's very hard to find them. And when you do find them, it's very hard to get on the top of their list. And the only way to get on top of their list is actually to do a couple of deals successfully with them. But also dealing with property practitioners as a sourcing strategy might also be difficult because there's also legal ramifications, and there's also the dialogue when you have a middleman between you and the seller. Essentially, you're going to find a lot of issues there. So I've actually changed my strategy in terms of property practitioners. I won't actually go full force on that. Another way you could find is brokers. Brokers are also people who will find the deals before they actually list. So if you find a good broker, get to know them. You're not going to be on the top of their list if you're starting off. You're going to have to do a few deals with them. Eventually, you will earn their trust, and they will call you with the first deal they have before it goes into listing. So here's essentially important criteria, from my experience, what I've gathered. So you have to know your neighborhood. You don't have to go out through every town and every suburb in Johannesburg. You can just focus on a few, and you'll be surprised by you driving for dollars how many deals you actually see, or potential leads you can actually see in the neighborhood. And you have to know the strategy of the neighborhood, and the way you can find out what's the best strategy is that if you use your Lightstone reports, you can find out what's a good rental area, what's a good flipping area, what's good for multi-lets, that kind of thing. Again, you want to look at the demographics of the place. What are the age of the population? Are they working class? Is it mostly drug dealers around there? And another important factor, if you're thinking of flipping, is the absorption rate. And the absorption rate is essentially you determining how many properties in that neighborhood sell in a specific time. So essentially, in my area, which is Myrdal, a property on average takes about 8 months. And again, if you have the tools like a TPN and Lightstone, you can actually determine that kind of absorption rate. And that's important because that's you don't want to be in an area where it takes on average 12 months to actually flip a property, because that's an extra cost that you're not paying for. In some areas I found that are not in Johannesburg, you might be looking at 2 years. I've seen properties that have been on list in certain areas for, I think, since 2012, it's still listed on sites. So it's very important to know your area very well. Condition of the property. So if you have a buyer's list, or what essentially they're looking for is very important, because an investor won't take on every risky project. I know that the saying goes that, wow.
No, you plugged someone in. I'm so sorry. Client's wanting to go across the road.
Oh, sorry, Lawrence. Are you there?
Yeah, I'm here.
Can you just talk for a few minutes? Sorry, there's an issue.
Yeah, I'll take them through the slide. No worries. Okay. Sorry about that, guys. Mo is calling in from the office, but he's talked me through essentially his presentation, so I can take over. He's already mentioned the in your target neighborhood, right? So strategy, location, demographics, and absorption rate. The condition of the property, like he's saying, you have to understand your investor. Some investors are willing to take on bigger projects, some aren't. I work with investors sometimes that have their own builders and their own teams, and they can take on fire and water damage because that's something that they're comfortable doing. And then I'll give it over to Mo, and he can continue with point 3.
Sorry about that, guys. So sometimes I'll give an example. Sometimes you find a misfit in a neighborhood, and that's essentially a house that's built in a very irregular way. It's not very symmetrical. It wasn't built to the correct standard, and you might think that's a good deal, but in certain cases, I'll give you an example. We found a house in Douglasdale, and we got it for a really good deal. But when we bought the builder's deal, the builder said, well, this isn't built to spec, and it's built in a very odd position. So which means we're going to have to demolish everything and rebuild everything from the ground up. So I don't think every investor will actually be looking for a deal like that. So you have to be able to determine actually what are the costs essentially for a deal like that. Now, on the hindsight, you might actually say, okay, if I can find a developer to take over this project, to source it to, that might be a good deal, but you've got to have a developer ready to go on this deal. So there's also another opportunity over there.
Mo, just quickly, we've got another five or so minutes before we head to questions. Is that still okay for you?
Okay, let me try and speed it up.
Cool.
Cool. Okay, I think this is basically just saying, know what your buyers actually want. If the investor wants 15%, you've got to find that 15% deal, you know. And that's how you also, and I'll show you how to actually determine, how I determine my sourcing fee at the end of the day. So here's ways that I actually source deals and try to do it in a legal fashion. So what you can do is you can partner with an investor, and essentially what you can do is create a company, and you will sign the contract under that company. And if an investor decides to actually take on the project, you sell the shares to that investor, and you get your sourcing fee. And the investor will use that company to actually purchase the property. Another way you could do it is that investor doesn't have the money to pay you now. Is say, okay, investor, I will give you this property, but are you willing to give me some equity in it, maybe 2%, you know? And when you sell the property, I at least get something out of it. Cash and release is basically as simple as this. You go to a seller and you just be honest with them. Look, I have people interested in this deal. If you give me a week to actually get these people to you, I will make it worth your time. And essentially what you'll do is that you will bring your partner, who's the buyer, onto the project to sign the offer to purchase. So you could I've seen people partner with agents, so they split the cost 50-50. You could partner with another sourcing agent. Maybe another sourcing agent has a client list of buyers, something that you don't have. Again, you know, 50% of something is better than 0% of nothing. So, you're always thinking about that. You could do a back-to-back if you are more of a risk-averse person. And essentially, contingencies, always have your exit plans in there. And never ever sign a deal you don't intend buying yourself. I can't say that more than enough. You don't want to, legal ramifications are, I can't talk about that, but essentially, I'm pretty sure all of you have heard that before. So when dealing with sellers, very important to build rapport. When I meet a seller, I never actually throw numbers out. For me, I need to get to know them. They need to get to know me. And I don't even give them the number on the first or give them any indication of a number on our first meeting. For me, it's just building rapport. I'm being honest with them. I'm telling you, this is my intention. I help investors source properties, and they don't have the time to find the deals themselves. So I help them find deals, and this is how we work, and this is how fast we can do it for you. And essentially, you want to be a problem solver. You always want to know what the problem is and how you can solve it. And it's very important when you are dealing with sellers, you're dealing with a decision maker. Last month, I dealt with a person who wasn't a decision maker, and I told the person essentially, okay, I'll do the deal with you. He was giving me about 60% off from the deal. I said, but I want to talk to your mom. And I didn't hear back from him since then. So always deal with the decision maker, because you don't know who's a con artist, who isn't a con artist. And those people also will take their chances with you, especially if you're advertising in newspapers. Always fulfill their commitments. If you can't do it, don't do it. You have to have buyers ready. If you say you can sell it in 14 days, then you better have a buyer ready in 14 days. When dealing with cash buyers, again, it's building rapport. It's how you secure the deal. What kind of leverage does the cash buyer have? That's also essential. It's something you can use to negotiate with the seller. And what happens if that buyer doesn't come through at the end? Do you have a plan B? So my top 5 is, think of it as a business. You have to have key performance indicators. You have to know how much it costs to acquire a lead. What's your marketing budget? Consistency. Look, you're not going to get it right the first time. It takes me 100. I analyze 100 deals before I actually get the one that looks good. So it's a numbers game. Do your comps. The comps essentially is, a property in Sandton, the finishes, the renovations are very different from a property in, let's say, Witbooi. So you're not going to do the same renovation budget in Witbooi as you do in Sandton, and vice versa. And this affects your basic proposal to your buyers, which is essentially also, what you don't want to do is you want to be like Captain Ahab. I've been caught in this a few times where I've seen a property that was too juicy, but it was way bigger than what I thought. I thought, I'm going to do the extra work, get it under contract, and it just fell through, and that cost me a lot of time and a lot of effort because I just couldn't see any other way.
This is actually the proposal, if I'm not mistaken, Mo, that you used to secure the deal. And I just wanted to show you what an actual proposal will look like. So this is Mo's proposal on that multi-let that he was talking about. So the first thing he's got here is he's got a nice executive summary. And you can see this is professional. He's got a picture, he's got the description, he's got the amenities, he's got the high-level property values. He's got some descriptions, and you can, pretty much a person who's not in the property game can read this and understand this. It's very well written. Then he's got some more of the analysis. What does the architecture look like? What are the numbers, the rehab analysis? You can see he's gone into a lot of detail as to what's the financing, the buying, the holding costs, etc. He's taken some great pictures. I think it's always good to visualize, especially in COVID, people might not be able to go and view the property. At least Mo's giving them a lot of context here as to what it looks like, kitchen, rooms, bathroom, etc. Here's the multi-let numbers, right? So the income, the expenses, the cash flow. He's also put some nice charts and graphs here, again just showing some future projected income, which is great. And then here you go, 15% return on investment. Guys, this is a no-brainer. A deal of this magnitude will sell pretty quickly because it's a great opportunity, because it makes a lot of financial sense. Now here's where he's been, in my opinion, very clever. He's got exit strategy number 1. Refinance after 6 months. So you go to the bank, you ask for a loan, you extract all your money out. Your return on investment then goes to 17%, which means a bit of an increase. So that's great. That's an exit that we can look at. The second exit is Airbnb. Now here, this is very clever. He's taken a report from an Airbnb company and shown what the vacancy rate would be, how much, or the occupancy rate, how much the revenue forecast would be, the daily rates, the etc. And now he can start to run the numbers from a Airbnb point of view, which is obviously a little bit more lucrative. And then the third exit, flip the property. So sell it back to the market, recover your costs. And this, ladies and gentlemen, is why I think Mo has got this deal across the line, because his proposal is so professional that anybody with a potential interest in property and some savings in the bank would consider this deal. Thanks for watching another video with us. I hope you enjoyed yourself. If you're interested in learning more about how you can become financially free through property, here are 2 steps. Firstly, please go and get a copy of my book. You can get it at Exclusive Books, Amazon, or Take a Lot. If you're interested in getting more practical with property, perhaps you want to join our online university, or you want to get a one-on-one coaching experience, please go to my website, www.lawrencebull.com, and don't forget to subscribe.